Today we're going to get plugged in as we have a look at the McFarlane Toys The Matrix Series 2. This is Trinity Falls. Trinity here, depicted in the dream sequence at the very beginning of The Matrix Reloaded, has her in a falling position, and a rather interesting perspective display base comes included with the figure as well. Certainly it's going to be one of the more interesting figures to review, and let's grab the tape measure. Now, I kept everything intact. Normally we would look at the figure, then we would look at the accessories, but based on the fact that this figure is not going to stand on her own and is really intended for the setup that you currently are seeing, we're going to go ahead and measure everything, the whole kit and caboodle. We're going to start at the very bottom, work our way up to the rippled bullets, and the statue, as it's going to be a statue, it's not really posable or anything. The statue is going to stand at a very impressive 11 inches in height. So why don't we actually start with how this will look when you get it out of packaging. And of course there's a whole lot happening here. They don't give you instructions as well, so it's really up to you to figure out on your own how everything comes together. Why don't we first have a look at Trinity, then we'll look at all the components, then we'll put everything together. I sort of lied at the beginning of this review. I said she's not really posable. That's not 100% true. She technically does have nothing in this leg here, but she does have leg articulation. I don't even know why. Arm articulation, which makes a little bit more sense, and you can also rotate at her head. But again, like based on what the figure is supposed to do, she doesn't really have much in the way of posability. Having a look at her face, it's actually not a bad representation here of Trinity. It is a little on the cartoon side, but I gotta say the accuracy for what they've done here, capturing the likeness of Trinity here, I think is actually pretty good. Again, it could be a little bit better by today's standards, but all around, McFarlane was churning out some pretty good sculpts back in the day. The mileage for this particular piece is for the fact that it's going to be displayed in this setup. So really, again, you're never going to be displaying the figure just solely on her own, just kind of standing. Because right now, it looks like she's just in this scared fetal position. Paint is pretty much very void here. I mean, really all you're getting is whatever paint is in her face there. The rest of her body is jet black, and a rather slick black as well. I could add to the fact that it should have used a little extra paint because there's really a lot of good sculpt happening here. Ultimately, it just kind of gets blended in the wash as we are treated to a very shiny black body. But really, that's how she looks in the movie, so I guess one can't be overly critical of that. The only thing, surprisingly enough, that isn't of that same color is the soles of her feet. They are of a slightly more lighter matte black, and they've actually even textured the undersides of the soles, so that's pretty cool. There's a big hole on the back. We'll talk about that in a second. Not too bad of a figure. I may or may not have, okay, I'm leaning a little bit more towards may have had a crush on Trinity from the Matrix movies. I'm just FYI. Oh, by the way, as well, she does also have swivels in the hands. Okay, so that is the figure in a nutshell. I use the term figure very loosely here. I'm just going to put her down for a second in a fetal position. And let's have a look at the display base. Now, here is the bottom of the base. And it actually will pose, well, it displays like this. So again, you've got the perspective of the city roadway here, the shattered glass, and then the side of the building. It's a rather interesting looking way that they've taken a spin on the figure. Something to the credit of McFarlane Toys is what they did back in the day. It's not something that a lot of companies are doing now. Really cool, dynamic, in this case, very dramatic sort of posed figures. And again, I'll show you how everything comes together in a second. On the other side, we've again got a side of a building, a very slight very obvious, I should say, green tinted lens filter over top of that, so it gives you a slight, very obvious green tint. And again, the pieces, well, they're gonna go together like this, which really does make for a rather narrow looking presentation. It's a figure that really does well looking at it this way, but if you have it displayed, well, even if you just have it displayed with the figure standing upright, it really does lose something. To get that full experience, it's cool to look at the figure straight down like this. So, there's the base. There's the back of the base. She does also come with a post, which will attach to the back, and then will attach to the base. I'll show you that in a second, but this is a very solid metal pole post. And then you've got very altering peg shapes on either end. One is going to be for her back, one is going to be for the base. She does also include a pair, minus the hair, a pair of small machine guns. Semi-automatic machine guns. Again, no expert here when it comes to firearms. They are pretty much identical to one another. I suppose some argument could be made that the paint may slightly vary between the two, but other than that, the sculpts are almost, in fact, are identical. The other thing that she comes included with is the bullet time, or the rippled bullet attachment. Now again, this adds to the perspective in which you're going to be looking at the figure. Very clear. For the most part, actually, the length of it is clear. And you can see that there's like the little ripples through that in which the bullets would be firing off. I don't know if they should have added a bullet on the end. There is nothing really on the end here, nor I don't think I've missed anything in the packaging. But again, it's really a nice looking effect. You get two of them, but they are drastically different in sizes from one another. This one has an extra piece down below, and again, the length of them will vary drastically. I will say though, putting them in place, they sit loose. Any bit of banging, any bit of moving on these will fall out of the pistols, or the pistols rather, will drop on the floor. Hold on one second. The first and I hope only the last time you'll see something fall in this review. We'll go ahead and again reattach that. Sits again very loose. Like I had mentioned before the dropping, any bit of tapping, any bit of moving, these do pop out very, very easily. I thought one was designated for one pistol over the other, or one semi-automatic handgun over the other, but it doesn't seem to matter which way I switch them. They don't look like they have distinct shapes to them, telling me that they have to go specifically on this one or specifically on that one. So again, they'll be very, very loose. I guess if you plan on really keeping this as one permanent fixture, just ultimately glue those. Call it a day. Save yourself a lot of time, save yourself a lot of hassle. Okay, so let's go ahead and get all the assembly required. What you're going to do is these little slots, and you'll see these tabs that have these little thin pieces of plastic. Those will line and slot themselves. It's probably best I show you on this side. We'll slot right here, and we'll slot right here. A simple push, just push that down. There we go, making sure it's nice and leveled. And there's your base. Then you can take Trinity, and it's probably best to attach this first. I find this is a little difficult, or confusing at first, easy to figure out later. When you want to put it in, there is a circular shape, but then there's slots on either side. And see how there's these little notches on either side? Don't put it down straight. What you really want to do is put it down on a slant. Put it down almost to the point where it's parallel to the back of the backdrop here. And just push that down as far as it will go. Then go ahead and take Trinity. See, there's that little peg hole in the back of her. Slot her. And you could do this the opposite way, really. You could plug her in first and then slide this into place. Of the two pegs, noticeably, she is a little more difficult to kind of get in place. Then we'll go ahead and get the pistols. Bring the camera up a little bit. There we go. Put the pistols in place. Don't worry, I'll give you a better look at all of this after I get everything together. There's one. Grab the other. Slot those in. Perfect. And then when that's all happened, when that's all finished, what I will do is I'm going to put these in last, but I just want to show you, because I know that's the one thing that's going to fall, I want to show you how that looks when you are looking at really from the top. Again, it loses something. I guess not too bad. If you're having it just simply like that, it does bring your eye to it. There's something going on here that you want to see more of. But to get the full effect, again, looking at upright, looking at from the top down, is really the best effect, and exactly the way that the scene played out in the beginning of the movie. Alright, so let's try our best to get these plugged into place. Again, I will not rule out the idea of using glue. Some people would say, why would you use glue? Well, again, if you're not planning on taking this apart anytime soon, or at the very least, say if you're going to take this apart, the guns necessarily don't need to have these removable. If I plan on keeping them on permanently and then just applying the pistols to her hands, again, I don't really necessarily need to have those be removable, which I think, again, is what I'm probably going to do. I'm just going to glue those in place, because, again, these are, for something so easy and straightforward, you would think that they would plug into place a little bit better. Mileage is going to vary here. Time for how long these will stay in place will vary, but let's get a gander. I'm going to spin it right to the side so you can see there. Really neat looking effect. I wish these would stay in place a little bit better, mind you, but it still is a really neat effect. This was when McFarlane Toys was, I believe, and will state this, kings of action figures. They were releasing movie property tie-in figures, and not really specifically, well, let's release figures that we know are going to sell. They just really released all different characters, and that is very ever present here in the Matrix series too. As again, some of the characters I would have debated, you know, why they would have made them into figures. I'm really glad actually that they made Trinity here into a figure, and especially giving her this distinct look. It's really cool, especially looking at it from the top, seeing the cityscape underneath, which unfortunately my light is reflecting very badly off of, so it almost comes across very white and pale. But it's a neat looking effect. Best looks looking down this way is the best way to see the figure itself. But again, it looks just as good, I think, if you have it on display like this as well. By the way, if you were wondering why we're having a look at Trinity in this video, I just happened to be going through my totes and found her still tucked away, sealed as the day I bought her. So I decided, you know what? I think we're going to be getting ourselves a Hot Toys Neo in the next little while. And there's talks that there's going to be a Matrix reboot, or perhaps a sequel to the original trilogy. All the more reasonings why I thought it was prime time to get this one out of packaging and have a look at her. I'm really surprised that I didn't open up this figure sooner. I like the perspective that McFarlane Toys has given this particular figure, and a really nice twist to what we would normally get with conventional figures. For all the arguments to be made about somebody who's always posing their figures in straight museum poses, basically standing straight, this is a great alternative to that, because it does something very drastically different with an action figure that few companies have tried themselves. So kudos, McFarlane Toys. Though I do criticize you now as to walking that fine line between figure and statue, and whereabouts do you sit, I have to admit, back in the day, you were really churning out some incredible figures. Trinity here being probably up near the top of the list. In fact, I would say like the Matrix figures, the alleyway scene, the lobby scene, I should say, with Neo and Trinity, those two figures are awesome. I really like the Agent Smith versus Neo, which was also part of this particular wave as well. They were really churning out some pretty cool stuff back then. I almost wish that they would go back and do very interesting things like this again with some of the newer stuff that they're producing. Nonetheless, though, today we were having a look at McFarlane Toys. This was the Matrix Series 2, and this was the Matrix Reloaded Trinity Falls. A long overdue figure. I should have probably reviewed her sooner. If you guys wanted to have a look at some of the other McFarlane Toys figure reviews that I've done, it's simply a case of heading over to my McFarlane Toys Matrix playlist or McFarlane Toys playlist. I don't think that the Matrix will be its own subcategory, but if I end up doing more of these, which I'd like to, you never know, there'll probably be also a McFarlane Toys Matrix playlist as well. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below, bunkos. That will mean that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out. And on top of that, make sure as well you head over to the main page. See if there's any videos that I've posted recently that you may have missed out on, and feel free to check those out and comment on them in the comment section down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do. I'll see you next time.